HTML is for transferring data from the server to the browser. Now, it's a bad idea to combine data and styling related information. The appearance of that element on the screen, if it should be red color, if it should be font 50, it should be like super wide, it should sit together with other elements. All those styling details, they should not be specified in this one document. The reason is extremely simple, is that it is going to make the maintenance of that website extremely difficult. And then if you separate those two concerns out, that thing is going to work a lot better for you in most of the cases. So the HTML that you created should only have the data that you want to display on the page. And to separate out the styling related information or the styling related coding, you create something called as styling. Now there are multiple ways that you can specify that. You can do that in line over here, or you can do that in the style tag inside the head over here, or you can create a separate file and put an extension of CSS, and then you can link that CSS file inside. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought if I drag it, it's going to autocomplete. You can create a link tag, specify the relationship as a style sheet, and provide a reference to that particular document. So not the HTML, the CSS document. And then this way, the CSS file demo.css is going to get associated with demo.html. Right? These three ways. Inside the CSS itself is a combination of multiple selectors. Now, what is a selector? A selector is going to select elements, HTML elements on the page for you, and then because it is selecting elements, it is called a selector. No surprises there. Uh, these selectors can work on the elements directly. You can specify names like h1, h2, paragraph tag, the div tag, the body tag, and then all the tags that you can think of, you can put them in the elements. Now each browser has a lot of uh, has default has default for all the elements that are present in the page, and that styling is kind of applied to it. So browser come with different default styling, and that is generally present here. Like this has a margin and of 8 pixels and a display of a block. So those are element selectors for you because they are specified using the name of the element. The second type of selector is called a class selector, and class selectors are generally are specified with a dot keyword, and then you put a name of the class here. Um, and then the third type of selector is called an ID selector, and for ID you will have to specify the ID of that element starting with a hash sign. So if you start with a hash, it becomes an ID selector. If you specify a dot, it becomes a name selector. And if you specify the name of the HTML element, it becomes the element selector. A selector is going to select an element from your HTML document. So with that, let me move to the next topic. All right. So if I let me go ahead and pull up an HTML document, and I'm going to simply paste it here. Let's try and analyze this document for a moment. All right. So it has a head tag, a body tag. Body has an h1. Then there's a paragraph tag. There is a span tag. There's a hyperlink. Uh, and then another paragraph tag and a couple of list items. If we go to the browser and look at this document, all right, I'm forgetting the name of our document. It is demo.html. Let me just go ahead and launch it using go live. Okay, it was not taking the folder name. All right, this is what our document appears, looks like at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and start selecting each element, and then these elements, they have different styling. We have not applied any styling at the moment. The entire styling that is coming for these elements is from the browser right now, right? The p tag, and the li tag, right? We're going to start applying multiple settings, multiple styling to these things in just a moment. So let me go ahead and close this. All right. So let's go ahead, and because we already have a demo.css associated here, the way to link the CSS file with the HTML is through an element called link, and we have to specify a relation, style sheet, and we're going to have to specify the reference to that thing here again, and then I'm going to call demo.css like this. And with this styling applied, I'm going to come here and delete this particular thing. Once again, we are going to start with applying, say, an element selector, and I'm going to use a color of red. And if we now come to our document, that styling is applied over here. So H1 is kind of taking effect now. Now let's go ahead and style other elements. I can style the p tag as well. If I save this, the paragraph tag, they are going to become green. There were two paragraph tags, and then the last combination was the ul and li. But uh, what if I wanted to color these things also green? I have two options. I can come here and I can say li color colon green, and if I save this, these elements, they're going to become green as well. Uh, the reason, but I'm going to use a different syntax. I'm going to cut this. I'm going to put a comma here, and I'm going to put an li, right? And when I do that, uh, the effect of putting those two together, separating with a comma, is the same as creating two separate elements. The reason you should prefer this over the previous one is because you don't want to do a lot of repetition. You should do repetition only in cases where you want to do something more specific, like you want to have different font size for li element of say 32 pixel. If you want li to have at least one different property, that's when you create a separate selector. All right, and then that's when these elements become they're going to honor everything that you put in the other document. All right, now there are multiple ways you can style these documents. Like if you don't like these green dots here, there is a property called list style type, and then if you apply list style type and then look at different values possible, let me go ahead and click lower alpha and hit a semicolon, save, and then notice how it has changed from dots to A, B, and C. So it's a lowercase alphanumeric value, and then that has come through here. There are other values that are available. We can experiment with this, but then if you, for some reason, you don't want to have any value present there, you're going to put a none here. You're going to save it, and notice that that thing has gone. All right, there is no bullet point or any numbering present over here whatsoever. It got removed because we applied this particular styling. Okay, now let's go ahead and create. Let's add a class to this particular element. I'm gonna remove none. I kind of want to keep it there. But so these are all element selectors so far. We have already seen that we can create a class selector, and then a class selector starts with a dot, and then it has its own styling over here. So what if I want to have an orange keyword? Can I apply it to these li elements over here? And to do that, all I have to do is come to that specific element and then put the uh, class name, which was special. All right. So The way you're going to use this, if for some reason you want to highlight a particular product, say in a shopping cart, yesterday we looked at the Amazon.com site, and then there is a specific element that you want to highlight for whatever reason. All you have to do is figure out where that element is, and to that element you can dynamically apply classes and you can remove them. And this will be our topic for tomorrow. Through JavaScript we are going to add classes to these elements, and then we're going to style our document at runtime. One more thing that I want to bring attention to at this point, which probably is an HTML concept, is we are using a tag called M. Now M is for emphasis. It's a short for emphasis. It is a special HTML element. Uh, the way it appears on the screen is it is italicized. But if you want to italicize something, uh, you should not use M for that. I hope you remember the concept from yesterday that most of these tags they are not only for putting data in a specific format on the screen, but then they are also there for the search engines to extract information out of and then try to make sense out of it. So if there is something that you want to emphasize, only then you should put it inside the M tag. Questions related to its styling as to how you want it appeared should only be controlled through these particular tags. So if you want to emphasize but then make the font weight as bold, right? You should come and mention that here inside this particular thing. And then now if with that change added, with the bold applied, notice that 3 has kind of become bold, not this. And you can play around with multiple combinations. Probably you can put italics as well here on the same thing, and then it will be bold and italics. And then I don't remember what other options we have. Um, right. Let's see what 100 does. All right, so 100 didn't have any effect. Let's see what 500 does. All right, so I'm not sure what it's going to do. I was hoping that it's going to probably jump to that size, but then bold has a different variant called bolder, and if I save that, it is probably bolder than that. And then there is another option called lighter, and lighter probably is the default. So anything that you want to do with styling should only be part of this, even if you know that emphasis makes the text inside it italicized. Make sense? So do not get confused between those two things as to how to make things italics and how to make things uh, the other way. Uh, there is one more. There are ways in which you can be more specific and you can combine element and the classes. The way we can do that is instead of just putting dot special, if you want this special to only get applied, okay, let me go ahead and leave this as orange, and then let me go ahead and put this special class on, say, a p tag. So if I put special here, uh, this text here, this is the second paragraph, is going to become orange if I'm correct, right? But I want the li item with a special class applied to it in, say, some other color. So let's go ahead and apply that change. Special by default is orange, but then if I combine these two, li dot special, and if I put the color here to, say, blue, okay, now if I go, notice that the special class has continued to be orange, but then li dot special combination has turned to blue. This is because we have the selector in our CSS file, li.special has kind of taken effect and it has overridden what was coming from the special class. Make sense? And then probably uh, I don't want to experiment with the order right now, but then if I move this thing up, paste it here, I'm just experimenting. I don't know what is going to happen. All right, that thing has not taken effect. And this is the concept of this is another concept of styling, and it is called priority and precedence. Depending on how many elements you have in the selector, I hope you remember that it is called selector. Depending on how many members you have inside the selector, it is going to calculate a number, and then that number is going to dictate which is going to take priority. So notice the help text that appears on my screen. It is called Selector Specificity. All right, zero, the first zero that you see, it is for ID property. The one that you see is for the next one is for classes. Dot special is the class, and the next one that you see is for the element. If I go on applying more classes here, uh, and I'm going to call it, say, more special, probably those numbers are going to change now. All right. So because I have added two classes, anything that starts with a dot is a class. Uh, Notice that this particular thing has changed. Now let me also go ahead and apply an ID here. I can also put an ID, and I'm going to call it my list. And then if I hover over it now, notice that it is 1, 2, 1. The first one is indicating hashtag my list. The two is indicating dot special, dot more special, and the one in the end is stating the li tag. Now I can go on combining it and put a div keyword here, and then when I do that, notice that it is 1, 2, 2. So for uh, a combination of selectors to take effect, this number has to be very small. If there is an ID is going to take the highest priority, then comes the classes, and then comes the number of div tags. And there's a very specific calculation to this, like ID is 100 times more powerful than the element. All right, so the numbers that you're seeing here on the screen is 122. It actually is 100 into 1 into 100 plus 2 into 1 plus 2 into 1. So the priority for this is 104. All right, whereas the priority for this is only 1, because it is 100 into 0 plus 1 into 1 plus 0 into 1. Okay, so this thing is not going to take effect when we have a combination of this present somewhere in the code. All right, so this is a little deeper topic. Probably as you work more on CSS and styling documents, this thing is going to start making more sense to you. Okay, I'm going to do another experiment and see what happens when you have something h1 with a plus sign, and I'm going to go back to this. So I don't know what happened. Okay, so notice that this paragraph here was pretty small. The h1 itself was very small. When we add this, we are changing the font size to 200%. When I hit the save button, right, any combination where h1 and p, they are present together with each other, this combination is increasing the font size by 200. And if I select those elements, you will probably notice somewhere where the font size has changed. Okay, so do you see this? That the font size for this is coming through the selector that we have specified in our CSS file. Okay, moving on to the next section. All right, there is another type of selector, and it is called a pseudo selector. So the three types of selectors that we have seen so far is there's an element selector, there's a class selector, and there's an ID selector. The next type of selectors is called a pseudo selector, and the syntax for this is a little different than the normal. It's going to start with a colon, and then after colon you're going to have the pseudo selector name. Now wh where it gets applied is I've seen combinations of the A tag. It is called the anchor tag, and I have seen it on generally mouse actions, and they're called the hover tag. So have you noticed that when you click on a link, that link kind of changes its color? Okay, I don't know why it's going to example.com, but then this link earlier used to appear blue, but then after we have clicked on it, it appears a little darker color. I don't know what that is, but the idea is that if you hover, if you select this element, and if you go to its definition, notice that there is something called as :hov and .cls, and then those are Those are pseudo selectors for a hyperlink. But let's go ahead and experiment with those over here. I'm going to type a colon hover, and I'm going to change the font size to 40 pixel. So any a tag, if we get our mouse over it, the font size is going to bump up to 40, and we remove it, probably it is going to go back to its normal font. So do we have an a tag in our document? So there's one a tag here with this link here and then pointing to example.com. Let's go ahead and refresh our document. I'm going to come here, I'm going to refresh, and when I hover, notice how the font size is getting increased to 40, and when I remove my mouse, it is kind of going away. It won't it is not appearing inside the developer toolbar, but then there are some tricks using which, okay, right, so these are the elements. I had to click on it, right? Notice that I can turn on and turn off the hover effect of uh, the CSS. Okay, there is something called as visited as well. So once you visit that particular site, which we already have, you can change that particular styling as well. So let's go ahead and call it visited. And for visited, I don't like the color of the text. I'm going to change it to red. Right. Okay. So when I click on this thing, because we have already visited, it is red right now, but you can control. I hope you got the idea that when a link is visited, it appears different. Let me just for demonstration purpose, let me change this to example 2. It has turned blue again. Now, if I visit the site and if I come back, it is appearing red now. Make sense? Anybody trying to speak something? All right. So he's mute. All right. So we have seen how multiple kind of selectors work. Let me pick up the next topic. Now, there are ways you can combine these selectors. The reason for combining these selectors is you don't want to have the same uh, your HTML document. Let me go ahead and open up Amazon.com one more time. Right? In a serious application like Amazon.com, if you look at this HTML, right? They have multiple combination of divs and elements. So let me open that up. Let me select this element here. All right. Notice that this div um, in in CSS terminology, a display like this is called a card. Okay. They have multiple cards added here. One with, say, some suggestions for me. One is things that I have bought in the past and they want me to buy again, and then some things that they want to promote. So these are three different cards that they have created, and they have put them all next to each other. Now there are different styling that they want to apply. I think if my eyes are still working fine, the height for this particular box is, let me go ahead and select this text. So this is an H2 element, and then I think this is also an H2 element. Okay, so this is a span element. Notice that they both appear the same, but then explore top rated electronics and accessories is an H2, but then this is a span tag. Depending on what kind of element you are creating on a complex application, you're going to have a different hierarchy of element. So there's a div. Inside div there is an h3. Inside h3 there is a span, and inside the span tag there's another span. Right? And they have created this hierarchy. Now this hierarchy is supposed to have a specific theme, specific styling applied, and when you want that kind of styling applied to your element, to your application design, uh, your CSS file should represent that particular thing inside the document as well. And the way to do that is just start putting those things right next to each other. All right. So what this selector essentially is saying, that the outermost thing should be an article, and then this article somewhere has a P in it, and this P has a span somewhere in it. And then when that happens, they are applying a particular style. And then what I really like is this tooltip here. All right, and that this is coming because of the extension that we have installed. It is displaying a combination of HTML which this particular selector is going to affect. So do you notice the three dots? So there's an article, then there are three dots. The three dots indicate that it doesn't care how deep inside p tag is. So inside article we can have a div, inside div we can have a section, inside section we can have something else, and then we can have a p tag. Those three dots indicate that the selector doesn't care about how many elements deep that p tag is present. And inside the p tag, once again, it is not caring how many elements are there, but then span is direct or indirect child of the p tag, and p is the direct or indirect child of the article element. And then with this, if you apply a theme, say background color, and then you put say red here. Now we don't have this combination, so let's go ahead and generate that in our code. I'm going to use once again my favorite tool, Emmet. I'm going to put a couple of divs just to showcase that it doesn't matter how many elements you have inside P. I'm going to put a div, and then inside div I think there was a span, right? And I'm going to hit this, and I'm going to say hello world, and then this combination uh, of elements, and then this selector here, they are going to take effect, and eventually, hopefully, we're going to see hello world with uh, I've lost my browser window, just one second. So over here I'm seeing hello world. I'm not seeing background color at the moment because it is article and p and span. Font size, let me make it 40 pixel. So font size is also not taking effect. I think it could be because of uh, 003. Give me 1 second while I figure this out. Maybe, all right. I am not very sure why this is not working. Let me go ahead and delete these elements. When I save. All right. So I think when I said that it doesn't care how many elements it has, I was wrong. They have to be probably direct child. All right. So all right, we have kind of fixed it. My statement was wrong that they can be any number of elements. They have to be direct child of that particular element. Only that's when it works. So with that, we have seen how to combine multiple elements, and then these elements together, they are going to influence how we want to create websites like Amazon.com and create containers like this. So moving on to the next topic. All right. There is an advanced concept that I think I should show you. Uh, I'm going to delete most of this HTML and I'm going to put two divs. I save this. Notice that there's an outside div with a class outer applied on it, and there is an inside div with a class box applied on it. The CSS concept that I'm trying to explain is called function. And let me go ahead and put a CSS over here on the screen for you. Okay, so this is the CSS. This is the class selector. The class name is outer, and then there's border applied to it with this particular setting. And then notice that there is a calc function that we have applied. And then what this calc function is doing is it is doing 90% minus 30 pixel, and then it is applying a background color, and then otherwise the color of the element is going to be white. Okay, this is going to have an interesting appearance on our screen. So notice this. So if you want to create a progress bar of that appears remotely similar to this, you can start applying these calc function to the width, and then as you change this number, it is going to influence uh, uh, the UI of this particular thing. So this is a nice exercise. Probably we can attempt doing this in our section tomorrow for JavaScript, where we are dynamically modifying the width value through some JavaScript code, and then through this code we are going to increase this value and um, probably simulate a progress bar. So if you have some download application, you can use a combination of such things that the width of the element is getting increased, and then it is through this that we are applying the background only to the selected width of an application, no, of an element. Okay, so this was one advanced concept that I ran into. I thought I would show it to you. It would be nice. All right, I want to talk about at least one more concept, and it is called as boxing. All right, so in CSS, there's a uh, the way these elements are saved and stored, they fall under the category of the box model. All right, a box model is what we see here on the screen. Uh, it is a general appearance of an element, and it has multiple things to it. So let's go ahead and let me demonstrate this to you uh, with probably a paragraph tag. So I'm going to create a paragraph tag, and I'm going to put hello world inside it. Now if I switch to the UI, nothing fancy here. P is appearing as a paragraph and uh, inside a box. What I can do is on this P, I can get rid of all of this, and let me put this. Now I'm going to say uh, padding of 20 pixel, and then margin of 30 pixel, and before this I'm going to put border of 10 pixel, and then I'm also going to say solid and red. And now if I save this, notice that this thing has kind of moved away from all the way to the top to somewhere in the middle. If you compare this diagram, let me go ahead and select our paragraph tag, right? Uh, this data in the center, this blue rectangle is where our data is going to sit, is the main content holder of that particular element. Now, the next immediate thing to that is padding, and then padding is within the boundaries of that element. Okay, so the main content, outside the main content there is padding, outside that there is border, and then margin is something that separates the element from other elements. So it works in this particular order, that you have the element itself, then you have padding right outside it, and then outside padding you have border, and outside border you have margin. Border is part of the element, padding is part of the element, margin is something that separates the element from the other elements where it is present. Okay, so I wanted to showcase, demonstrate that. There is a tricky HTML for that. Let me go ahead and pull that on the screen. I'm going to replace this hello world here with this particular thing and going to adjust it a little. So there are three elements that we have added. One is paragraph. The paragraph has some default text and a couple of span elements inside it. Then there is a ULLI, a listed item, item 1, item 2, item 3, and then there are two more paragraph tags with an inline class applied to them. Now let's go ahead and uh, try to style this particular document, and we are going to start over here. Now we are combining these two tags together. We are saying that we want a border of 2 pixel solid and a purple color. If we go and look at our document now, there is our data, there is a list, and then it has drawn the border outside because we have put it on UL and not LI, and then two more paragraphs, and they have inline styling, an inline class which we have not applied at the moment. Let's go ahead and apply a different styling. There were two span tags inside this particular thing, span element and somewhere over here, and then these items, they are a little different. So let's go ahead and modify those elements through another combination of the element selector. So there is another border, but then this time the border color is blue. Let's just make it green. It's going to be a little vibrant, and it's going to stand out real quick. It's going to stand out nicely. So the span tag has a green border. This span tag has a green border, and these li elements, they also have green border around them. Right? Notice that li is like going all the way to the end. Okay, but then the span tag has kind of tucked themselves into the space that they need. Okay, uh, I'm going to add some more CSS to it inside the UL. I'm going to remove these bullet dots by applying this particular styling. So there's display, there's something called as Inline Flex, and then I'm removing any styling to it, and then I'm putting a padding of 0. So with that applied, notice that they have kind of stuck together, right? They've kind of floated back to each other, and that is because of something called as flex. Uh, if you want to arrange your element in a specific way, this is how you should be doing it. Once again, I'm going to go to Amazon.com, and then notice how these three elements are like sitting next to each other, but then they are div. If you want to style div and have them sit next to each other, you should apply some form of flex styling to it. Okay, so that is happening because of flex. In fact, I can show you a better example of that. Give me 5 minutes. Okay, and then there is another class that I'm going to add. So if you remember this HTML, that these p tags, they have inline class applied to them, but then the inline class is not present in the CSS file. If I now go ahead and apply inline, and then I change the display to inline, notice that these elements, they have kind of jumped to top, right? If I come to the CSS file and remove this inline, the two p tags, they're going to fall back together. And if I remove this inline flex, the UL elements, they are going to fall back together. So instead of sitting next to each other, they are like stacked on top of each other. Make sense? So there are different properties that you can select, and then on those properties, if you start applying uh, effective values, the UI is going to start behaving differently. And then all along, your HTML is almost untouched, except that you have a couple of classes specified. But in these classes, I mean, this is the binder. Uh, this is what binds the HTML element with these CSS elements. All right. Moving on. So we have already talked about the box model. All right. So I told you about showing you that example in a better way of Inline Flex. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I have two div tags here, and then there are classes. These classes, they are not defined at the moment. Um, I'm just going to come here and clear out everything. And then if we go to this, if you go to our UI, these two div elements, they are uh, the blue line indicates that they are block element. They are taking the entire width of the available screen, and they are present here. Now let's go ahead and start applying some styling to it. So I'm going to start with the class name, and I'm going to call it dot box. And over here, uh, let's go ahead and add some background color to it. So the background color is going to be, say, gray. Uh, the I'm going to apply some border to it, say 5px solid red, and I'm going to apply some padding, let's say 40 pixel. I'm going to apply some margin to it, say once again 40 pixel. I'm going to give it a specific width of say 300 pixel, and I'm going to give it a height of say 150 pixel. All right, so with that, if I come to the screen looks a little different now, right? They are like they both stretched to 300 pixels, and they have kind of tucked together. So if I now select these elements, notice that they are still taking the entire row, but then they have kind of limited their width. The green line is the padding, and then the blue is the actual content. So the actual content is height and width 300 by 150, padding is 40. There is border. I think we had border, right? So okay, so because there was a spelling mistake that did not take effect, I'm going to have to put an R here. We have a border of red, and it is taking 5 pixel, and then margin is the outside part. Even if it is 40, the right side has kind of stretched to the entire row. Now I'm going to come and apply another styling to it. I'm going to call it, if I remember it right, it is called grid. And if I provide a value of flex, they are going to arrange themselves differently. Okay, okay. Let me experiment with this very shortly. But if I change this to display colon inline, if I change this to display colon inline, those two elements, they have kind of tucked together, and they are like sitting next to each other. Probably this is how I would build if I was supposed to build like these three boxes right next to each other. Okay, so moving on. There are multiple kind of borders that you can draw. For that, all you have to do is probably change this solid to a different combination, and then that might show some intelligence. Okay, so this is only showing color. Uh, okay, so these tags, they are combination tags, and then probably you can have different uh, border specific element that you can apply. So if you want to have, the first element is width, the second element is the style, and the third element is the color. If you want to have a different width for the border, if you want to have different width only for the bottom of the border or left of the border, you can do that as well. Say I want the left to be 10 pixels wide, and then I want it to be, say, dotted, and I want it to be blue color. So if I save this and go back to my HTML, right? Notice that it is a dotted color. Let me go ahead and delete inline styling. It is kind of getting in the way. Right? Notice that only the left border is dotted. So there are different combinations that you can select through this particular thing, uh, through being more specific about what kind of border you want to apply. And the same thing is also available in margin as well. If you want to have only the left margin modified, you can come and specify that here. There is another syntax for that, that Instead of specifying like one value, you can specify a combination of values over here, right? So this is probably top and bottom, and this is left and right. But you can also specify three values over here. So this is probably top, this is left and right, and this is bottom. Okay. Or you can specify all four values. It is going to start at the top. So top is 5 pixel, right is 10 pixel, bottom is say 20 pixel, and right is 40 pixel. I don't know when you would do that or how you would do that, but if I save this and come over here, notice that 5 is sitting here, 10, 20, and 40. Okay, this is how you arrange multiple items. All right. So let me pick up the next topic. Right. So let's go ahead and look at Amazon.com once again, and then notice that these hyperlinks here, they are different. What I want to showcase to you now is when you are working on more enterprise projects or a more serious project than this, you would want to generate this kind of UI through a navigation tag. So let's go ahead and implement that now. So I'm going to put a nav keyword here, but the nav is generally part of header. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to come and type header and then put it inside, put a nav inside it. And inside nav, I want multiple hyperlinks. And then when you have a series, when you have a list of things, you should always think in terms of UL and LI. And I want at least 5 elements. Now I want all these 5 elements to have a different ID, say item something. So I'm going to type hash item, and I'm going to put a $sign. And then over here, I'm going to type 5, and then I'm going to hit uh, tab, and it is going to complete these elements for me. What I can also do is I can probably, alongside this, I can put an A tag with href equal to hash, and if I'm correct, this thing will work, right? So notice, okay, so it did not create an A tag, it only added an attribute. Let me, because I did not put a greater than sign here. So let me go, so I'm going to add that now. And then with that added, now li has a child A with an href of hash, and I'm just going to put, I'm going to start typing on all 5 lines, and I'm going to call it um, link. I'm going to leave this at that, and then I'm going to copy all these 5 elements, copy, and I'm going to paste it over here like so. When I do this and go to the UI is looking like this. Now we are nowhere close to what we want to so we are nowhere close to this particular navigation bar, and we want it to appear like the way it is appearing on the Amazon website. So the way to do that is, number one, we are going to style the UL element, and we are going to remove the styling from that UL, and line item style. Okay, I let me. All right. Okay, I keep forgetting these tags. There was line style colon none. I don't know if that is going to work. Okay, so we have with line style none, we have removed the element. Now these elements, these list items, they are taking the entire row. I don't want that. I want them to probably sit next to each other. So let me see if display in line is going to Okay, so that has kind of affected the UL element. I don't want that. I want that effect to be on the li element. So I'm going to come here, I'm going to put li, and over here I'm going to say display colon inline. All right, and these elements, they have kind of fallen together in one line, and we are getting closer to this particular arrangement. Now they kind of get a border on hover, a white border. Let's go ahead and try to draw some border for ourselves as well. The way we're going to do that is we're going to do ul li, and on hover I'm going to draw border of one, say, 3 pixel solid red. And I don't like how they are like so close to each other, so I'm going to do some margin. You use margin when you want to separate two elements. I'm going to put a margin of, say, 5 pixel. I'm also going to apply some padding of 5 pixel in all directions. And then if I now go to this, they have kind of moved away, and now when I hover over these elements, they are showing that nice little effect that we have on the Amazon website. Notice also that the mouse pointer kind of changes from the arrow to a finger pointer, and we can do that as well. uh, it is probably called pointer. uh, I don't know, so the value is definitely pointer. Okay, I forgot that. CSS. Oh, so the property name is cursor. So if I use cursor as pointer, now when I go to this element, right, my arrow kind of changes to cursor, and that thing takes effect. Make sense? So through the tricks and combinations that we have seen today, you can go about building fancy looking UIs, and these combinations, these elements put together, they can greatly influence, enhance the design of the websites that you are trying to build.